Yo, how's it going everybody? And welcome to a brand new series. And in this series we are going to be talking about my absolute personal favorite library for React, Material UI. Now look. I know that there's so many tutorials, so many courses on YouTube for this, but we're gonna have some fun with it. We're gonna have some laughs, some gaffs, and some halves. I don't know what any of that means, but by the end of this series, you should have a pretty solid understanding of how to work with this library, at least I hope. And without further ado, let's get into it. Alrighty, so I have opened up the documentation for this library. It's just MUI.com. The link to this is in the description down below. And the very first thing you see is the React library, the React UI library you've always wanted. And underneath it says, MUI provides a robust, customizable, and accessible library of foundational and advanced components, enabling you to build your design system and develop React applications faster. I agree with that. I agree with that. And you can see some examples of some components that they have right here. They have a simple card, a calendar. This is something that looks like a Spotify player or a music player, some tabs, a slider, buttons, etc. And so what we're going to do, we're going to click on Get Started. And in this video, we're just going to be talking about how to actually install this into our React project. In the next video, we'll start to learn about the basics and how to actually go on from there. Alrighty, so the first thing that we can see right here is the installation process. We can see that there's two different options we have with npm and yarn, and all it installs is the Material UI, emotion, and emotion style. Initially, Material UI is using the emotion styling engine by default. If we want to use styled components, we would have to use these commands right here, but we're just going to stick with these commands right here. Now before we do install this, let's go a little bit lower. We will see that by default, Material UI was designed with Roboto font in mind, but if we want to change it, we are able to change it in the typography. We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to talk about that in this tutorial. We'll talk about that when we cover typography. After that, we have font icons, and after that, we have the SVG icons. Now, one of my really cool and favorite things about this library is that it has really nice pre-built icons, a part of the actual library, and we can install it using just Material UI /icons-material. So without further ado, let's actually go ahead and implement this into a React app. Alrighty, so I've opened up my VS Code, and by default it opened up the Mantine course. If you want to learn all about Mantine, there should be a card that pops up in the top right corner of the screen. And I'm in the desktop, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a simple React app. So what I'm going to do is npx create-react-app, and I'll call it MUI course, and let that do its magic. Alrighty, so I have the app installed, and what we're going to do now is we are going to go back into the documentation, and we're going to copy the npm install command right here. If you're using yarn, you can copy yarn, but since I've installed npm primarily on my computer, that's what I'll use. And I'm going to open up a quick terminal, clear this, and I'll go ahead and paste it. Now before we press enter, we also want to install our icons. So at the very bottom, I'm going to scroll until I'll see the SVG icons right here, and I'll copy this little snippet right here since we already had the npm install in the beginning, and press enter and let it work its magic once again. Alrighty, so everything is installed, and I also npm started, and we can see that it runs successfully. Now what we're going to do is go back into our VS Code, and I'm going to open up my source folder and open up the app.js file, and we'll just put in a basic button just to make sure that everything is connected and working. So I'll just get rid of that template code, and I'll put in button for Material UI, and I'll type inside of here, this is a bouton. And if I press save, we know that this is from Material UI since it's being imported from Material UI. So now if I go back into our app, we will see that this is a simple button right there. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Alrighty, now before I conclude this tutorial, I just want to make sure that we have our icons imported. So I'm going to go back into the documentation, and in the search field right here, I'm just going to search up icons, and I'm going to click on this third link right here, which is going to take us to all of the available icons that we have in this library. So we'll just pick out a basic one. Let's select this person right here, and I'll just copy it. So we have different sizes here. We have a small, a medium, and large. But we're just going to copy the basic one and go back into our VS Code, and I'll import it at the very top right here. And just to make sure that's working, I'll call it right here. So accessibility icon, And now if we go back into the app, we should see a man right there. Perfect. So now we have everything installed and connected to our app. Alrighty then, so I've opened up the documentation and we are in the button section. The very first thing, if we scroll down, we will see is the 3 different types of variants that we have available to us in this documentation. We have a text default right here, we have a contained filled button, and we have an outline button. The text button is really prominent in a lot of cards or a lot of text-based links that you would see usually. And the contained is basic contained button, and an outline button is just a outline without anything filled in. So each of these buttons has 3 different states that we can give it, and the very first state is no state, so you can just have a basic button without anything. And the next one is a disabled state, where we can see right here the button is disabled, we can't do anything. And after that we have an href button, so we can actually click it and use it as a link if we wanted. Alrighty, so if I scroll lower, we will see the handling clicks prop. This is pretty universal. All it's doing is using a prop called onClick, and then whenever you click a button, you can trigger an event to occur. So you can have an alert, a function call, a console log, whatever you want. Whenever you click a button, this onClick prop will trigger the event. After that, we have the colors. Now, colors are really interesting. As you can see, we have 3 different colors right here. We have a secondary, a success, and an on error. But we have more than that available to us. If we click on this button right here that says adding new colors, it'll open up the palette for us. And if we scroll to the top right here, we'll see the default values. And instead of the default values, we have primary, secondary, error, warning, info, and success. So we have 3 extra colors that aren't actually part of this example right here. So we can actually implement this into our app if we wanted. Each of these does have its own sub color, but we're not going to worry about that in this tutorial. Alright, after that we have the size prop. What this allows us to do is to be able to change the size of the button. You can have either small, medium, large, and if you click on this, show the source code, you can actually see how it's implemented. All this is a button with a prop of size, and in strings, small, medium, or large. And after that we have the upload button. Now this is really interesting. If you just want to upload a file, you can click on this button, and it'll open up a file selector. Or if you want, you can actually use an icon button. So what is an icon button? Well, an icon button is just a button that's an icon. So if we scroll lower, we actually see this as an example. So right here we have a couple of icon buttons. This one is a trash icon that is regular and one that is disabled. After that we have a alarm clock that has a color of secondary, and after that we have a cart, add to cart icon that has a color primary. Now how to use this? All you would have to do is you would have to import an icon button tag, and then you encapsulate that tag with the icon that you want. So in this case they're using a delete icon. That's why they have a delete icon right there. And the way that they're using a disabled prop is they would just apply it into the icon button tag itself. So all of these icon buttons have the same types of prop available to you as a regular button. So we have the sizes prop, we have the colors that we talked about earlier, from secondary, success, info, error, all the ones from the palette right here. After that we have the loading prop. So the loading button is pretty simple. All it does is, number one, it removes the ability for the user to be able to click the actual button, and it just displays a loading spinner. So if you want to actually use this button in your app, you would have to use the loading button tag with the loading prop. If you don't have these 2 things, then it won't load. It'll just become like a regular button. After that, if we wanted to display a custom message inside of the loader, we can use the loading indicator like so. And if we wanted to, let's say, add an icon, let's say we want to put the spinner at the left side or the right side, we can use either loading position start to be on the left side or end to be on the right side. And right below the code we can actually see all this in action. So we have a couple of different types of loading buttons. We have a disable button, a fetch data, a button with an icon at the end, and a button with an icon at the beginning. And if you just click on this loading toggle, we can see how they are taking in effect. And right below the code we can actually see all this in action. So we have a couple of different types of loading buttons. We have a disable button, a fetch data, a button with an icon at the end, and a button with an icon at the beginning. And if you just click on this loading toggle, we can see how they are taking in effect. And if we scroll to the very bottom, we will see unstyled and unstyled buttons. So if we wanted to, let's say, use a basic HTML unstyled button, we can use this import right here, this button unstyled. And lastly, at the very bottom of the page, we have our API. API, basically all it has is your props, your ref, and all of your CSS class names that you can target. So if I go in a button right here, we can see that we have the props right here, the name, the type, the default value, and the description. And at the very bottom after that, we have the CSS, the rule name, the global class, and the description of what you're targeting. There's a whole lot of different types of CSS classes that you can target. And after that, we have the same thing for button base, button unstyled, icon button, and loading button. Same thing here. They're pretty hefty in size as well. So that covers the documentation. Let's go ahead and actually work with this component. Alright, so I've opened up the app that we've been building in the last video. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to import button from Material UI. And how you do that is just import curly braces button from Material UI, like so, at MUI/material, and we're just going to import it right into here, and I'll call it button 1. And if I save it, we'll see right here we have a simple button, and this variant is the basic variant, so it has no such containment or outline. Now if we wanted to give it a variant, all we would have to do is variant is equal to, we can do we can give it contained, outlined, or text. In this case, I'm going to give it outlined, and if we see how that looks, it's a simple outline button right there. Let's change the size. We can do size is equal to, let's give it a large size. We can see it's a little bit bigger, not substantially. If we make it small, we can see it's a lot smaller as well. And I've opened up the icons that's available to us in this library, and I'm going to click on this commute one, and we're just going to go ahead and import it into our button. So I'll import it into the app first. And the way that we would use this is either we do start icon is equal to curly braces, and we just have to import the actual icon, or we can do end icon, and we would just have to import the actual icon as well. As you can see right there, we have two of the same icons in the start and in the end. You know what? I think I should copyright this tutorial, so I am going to grab this copyright logo right here, and what we'll do is we're actually going to be using a logo button. Whoops, I meant icon button from Material UI, and I'm going to go ahead and import first this copyright icon and then put it into my app like so, and now I have successfully copyrighted this tutorial. I'm 100% sure that's not how copyright works, but I've said it and it's done. And if we want to change the color to this, remember we can't apply the color to the actual icon, we'd have to apply it to the actual icon button, and all we would have to do is color is equal to, we have primary, secondary, info, success, warning, and you know what, I'm going to give it a warning since this is a warning not to steal, and there we go, perfect. Let's make the size a little bit bigger, so I can do size to be large. And so I want to demonstrate how to work with the loading button, but the way that we install the app, initially the getting started didn't include the loading button, so let's go ahead and install that. In new terminal, I'm going to do npm I at MUI/lab like so, and let that work its magic. And underneath my icon button, I'll just do loading button, and I'll import it from at MUI lab, and just for text I'll type in here loading button. If we save it, we'll see a basic button that has no filling or any outline. Let's give it some filling instead of outline, so I'll do variant is equal to contained. There we go, now we have a filling. Alright, so the way that you can actually use the loading prop, all you have to do is type in loading inside of the loading button, and then you can see a loading button right there. If you want to add a custom message while it loads, we can do loading indicator, and let's give it a message of loading RN. There we go. That's a little bit big. I'll just type in loading. There we go. And let's say we want to add an icon. If we want to add an icon, what we can do is we can do start icon. And for the start icon, same thing. I'll just copy the commute icon right there, and I'll paste it there. And so while it's loading, it won't actually show any loading spinner or any icon for the commute. It'll only show this indicator, but if we get rid of the indicator Then we'll see the actual spinner, and if we get rid of the loading itself, then we'll see the icon with the text. But the one thing that we see here is that when we did use a loading prop right here, that it actually removed our text. But let's say we want to keep the text and actually have the spinner loading with it. In that case, what we have to use is the loading position prop, and we can either define it start or end. So if we did end, we can see that the spinner is there at the end right there, but it's being covered by the actual text. In that case, let's go ahead and replace this icon, and the way that we do that is we would do start. So whenever it's loading, it will replace whatever icon is there with the loading spinner, and if we get rid of it, then the icon comes back. Now let's cover styling and how we can style our buttons. Now the way that I'm going to show you, there's lots of ways to actually style in Material UI. The way that I'm going to show you is that we're actually going to replace the whole component itself with the different type of styles that we want. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import styled from at MUI/material/styles, and outside of my function app, I'll do const styled button is equal to styled. And so now we have to actually declare what kind of component are we customizing. Are we customizing a loading button? Are we customizing a regular button? An icon button? What are we doing? In our case, we'll do a regular button, and inside of here is where we can define all of our styles. So let's say we want to change the font size first. Let's change it to 25 pixels. Let's say we want to change the background color, and we can do that as well. Let's change it to let's do red, and let's say we want to change the, what else can we do? Let's say we want to change the padding, and we'll give it 25 padding. And now what we have to do, the way that we have to implement this, is we have to copy this name, and we'd have to replace the actual tag name of the targeted component. So in this case, it's going to be our button. So let's target our button like so. And now we can see that we have a button that has a font size of 25, padding 25, and a background color of red. Alrighty, so I've opened up the documentation for AppBar, and I'm going to quickly run over it at a high level. And so basically what AppBar, according to Material UI, what we can use an AppBar for is we can use it for branding, we can use it for screen titles, navigations, and certain actions. So one example, a really prominent example, is if you go on Stack Overflow, you can see an AppBar right here. It has some branding, it has navigation, it also has a basic search field and some login buttons. Also, this is the home page of Stack Overflow. I had no idea that they even had one. Alrighty, so go back into the documentation. If we scroll down, we'll see an example of a basic AppBar right here. The premise is, if we look in the code, it's really simple to make. All you would have to do is you would have to import an AppBar tag, and then you have to contain it within a toolbar. And that's exactly what this is right here. It's a basic toolbar, and inside of the toolbar you can actually define sections where certain sections can either be responsible for navigation, certain sections can be used for login, drop downs, etc. Alright, so scrolling lower, we'll see an app bar with the responsive menu. This is actually what we're going to be implementing into our app today. If you were to make our browser screen smaller, we'll see that this actually will collapse and show a hamburger icon instead of the links right there. So if I make it bigger, we'll see that we have the links, and if I make it smaller, we'll see a hamburger icon and with a drop down. After that, we have an app bar with a search field and a primary search field. Basically, you're allowed to have a lot of different configurations for your app bar. If you want it, you can add images, you can add videos, you can add whatever you want. In this case, they had some search fields, a couple of icons, and a hamburger icon. And going even lower, we'll see a bottom app bar. Basically, it's a top app bar, but you can put it at the bottom of your screen. After that, we have the scrolling ability, so we can actually hide our app bar if we wanted on a scroll. And if we wanted to elevate it, we can also do that as well on scroll. And a back to top button, so if I were to scroll down, we'll see this button pop up that takes us back to the top. And we're also able to implement this with dark mode, which is very simple. We'll learn about how to implement dark mode into our app later. But without further ado, let's get our hands dirty and actually work with this component. Alrighty, so I've opened up the app that we've been building the last couple of videos, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder in my source folder, and I'll call it components. And inside of my components folder, I'll create a new folder and I'll call it assets. Oops, not asserts. There we go. And this is what's going to host our branding images and all other images that we want for this app that we're going to be building. After that, I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call it appbar.js. And just so we have a little bit of information, I'm going to copy what we have in our app.js file, and I'll paste it into here. I'll call this appbar example, and I'll paste it right here. And I'll get rid of this content and put in here connected, just so we know everything is connected. Let's get rid of this content so we don't need this. We don't need the buttons or any of this stuff, neither do we need the app.css or this. And now if we go back into the app.js file, we're just going to go ahead and import it at the top right here. So I'll do app bar example and save that. And if we go back into the app, we should see connected right at the top, right there. Alrighty, now I'm going to go back into my app and go back into my app.appbar.js file. I'll get rid of this connected, and I'll create a box, and inside of this box I'll do SX, which is going to be our styling, flex, grow, and we'll set it to 1, and we'll have a little bit of margin, so I'll do margin bottom at 3, and it looks like it's not imported. There we go. Next, what we're going to do is, this is how to actually make the app bar. So first thing first, what we're going to do is app bar, and inside of there we will give it a position, this is very important, of static. And after that we're going to put in our toolbar, and this toolbar is where we're going to host all of our content that we want for our app bar. Whether we want our left section to have some images, or if we want our right section to have some search engines, we can have that implemented inside of the toolbar tags right here. And so this is what it looks like right here. This is the app bar with the toolbar, and now we can actually begin in implementing some sort of links, some imaging, and to make it responsive. So first things first, let's actually talk about how we can add some image branding. So remember when we created our assets folder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the image, which is going to be this face right here. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to do typography, and inside of the main typography tag right here, I'll do no wrap. We'll do component, and we'll equate it to be a div, and we'll give it some styling right here. So margin right is defined as MR, and we'll give it 2. Display, what we'll do here is we'll do XS to be none, and at MD to be flex. Basically what this means that at a certain width point, when Material UI detects that the app is in the XS portion, it'll have no display whatsoever, and if it's at medium, it'll have flex. So at none, sorry, at XS, it will make the actual image disappear, and at medium, it'll make it look flex. And the way that we're going to import this is I'll just do a simple image tag, and I'll give it a source. And for a little bit of styling, what I'll do is I'll do style, and I'll do width at 120, and we'll do height at about 40. And for our source, I'll do Lenny face. Same thing, we also have to import it, so at the very top I'll just do import Lenny face as /assets /Lenny face.jpg. Oh, whoops, I meant to do from. There we go. And this also requires an alt, so I'll just do alt is equal to Lenny face. There we go. Now if we go back into our app, we will see on the left side Lenny face. Let me zoom in a little bit. Oops, there we go. Now we can see Lenny face right there. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to implement our ability to be able to create a hamburger icon that on the click of it, it'll show a drop-down menu. So the first thing that we're going to do is outside of our app bar example function, I'll do const pages is equal to cards, carousel, and table. Now these will also be tutorials for this course later in the road. No spoilers though. Hopefully you can keep a secret. So after that, what we're going to do is inside of our AppBars example function, I'll do const handle open nav menu. This is an exact copy of how it is in the actual documentation. And what we'll do is set anchor el nav to be event dot current target. Oops, target. There we go. After that, we'll do const handle close nav menu is equal to set anchor el nav to be null, and let's go ahead and import. Whoops, I meant to do there we go, null like that. Now let's go ahead and import our actual variables for anchor el nav. So I'll do const anchor el nav and set anchor el nav. I seem to have misspelled it, so I'll do anchor chor. There we go. Is equal to use state from React initially to be null. There we go. Basically all we've done here is we're just checking whether or not the handle open nav menu is open or not, so if our drop down is open or not. And I forgot to add a n right here. There we go. So what we're going to do is after this typography tag, I'm going to implement a new box, and inside of this box I will do sx is equal to flex grow 1, and I'll do display at xs to be flex and at md to be none. Basically all we're doing here is we're implementing our hamburger icon to either be displayed at a certain width or not. So at extra small we want to display the hamburger icon and all of the contents that's inside of it, and at MD we don't want any of it to display. Alrighty, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy some code from the actual documentation and implement it into our app. So I'm going to find our responsive menu right here, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to grab all of this icon button information that's within the XS Flex and MD None section of the box. So we're going to grab this icon button which has a menu icon, and we'll also grab this menu as well. And I'll copy this and I'll put it into right here like so. And let's go ahead and actually import all of this stuff, and we'll talk about what we've actually added right here. Alrighty, so to first import all of our stuff, this menu icon doesn't automatically have an import, so I went ahead and copied the actual import, and that's going to be import menu icon from the actual icons library in Material UI. After that, we're going to import our menu tag like so, and right down here we'll also import our menu item. Alrighty, so let's just go ahead and quickly talk about what we did. So this icon button right here, very simply, is going to be responsible for, on the click of it, to run our handle open nav menu function, which is going to be setting our anchor el nav useState variable to be event.current target. After that, we have the menu tag itself, which number one at the very bottom right here has our prop of sx, which basically does display none at a width port of medium and beyond, and at extra small it displays as block. And on close it'll run our handle close nav menu, which just sets our anchor el nav function to be null. After that, we're checking whether or not our anchor el nav is true or false. So if it's false, it'll open. Oops, if it's false, it'll close. If it's true, then it'll open. And right after that, we are mapping through our pages const array right here at the top right here, which is very simple. All it's doing is taking a menu item for each of the individual items and setting it as the typography of the individual actual text itself. So it'll set it as cards, carousel, and table. And after that, in the menu item itself, we have our key, and on click we want to actually close our menu. Whenever we click on the link, we don't want to keep it open forever. So now let's actually go ahead and see what this actually looks like into our app. So if I go ahead and open it, we'll see our Lenny right there. But if I were to make our dimensions smaller, we'll see our hamburger icon. If I click it, we'll see our drop down. And if we click on a link, it automatically closes. Now let's go ahead and actually implement our links to be right next to Lenny right here. So going back into my app. Alrighty, so for that, what I did was I copied the code for the documentation, and what they're doing is they made a box that does the exact opposite of what our original box right here did, where at extra small it'll display none, and at medium it'll display flex. After that, all they're doing is they're mapping through the pages array that we created, and they're doing some styling, so color white, display block, on click, handle close nav menu, and they're just displaying the pages right here with the key of page. And so now if I save this and I go into my app, we should see our links right here with Lenny, and if I make it smaller, we see our hamburger icon with our actual cards right there. Alrighty, so I've opened up the documentation for drawers, and if we scroll down, we can see what Material UI talks about navigation drawers as, and they say that navigation drawers or sidebars provide access to destinations and app functionality such as switching accounts. They can either be permanently on screen or controlled by a navigation menu icon. So scrolling down, we have a couple of examples of the different type of drawers that Material UI provides for us. We have a temporary drawer, where if we click on this, it'll open a temporary drawer like so, where we can click away by clicking on an actual icon or clicking on this black backdrop right here. After that, there's a couple of more different types of temporary drawers where they have swipeable edges. So after that, we have the responsive drawer. Now the responsive drawer is pretty simple to understand. If I were to zoom in the page a little bit, we'll see a hamburger icon appear. If I click on the hamburger icon, it'll actually open up the nav bar right here, and that's how it's responsive. When the page gets small enough, it'll open up the hamburger icon. That's where you can actually see a button to open and close the drawer. So after that, we have the persistent drawer. This can be toggled open or close, but the drawer sits on the same surface elevation as the content. So right here, by default it is closed, but if we click on it, it'll stay as open and it'll stay persistent unless we actually click on this button. After that, we have the persistent drawer on the right side. Same thing, but it's just on the right side. After that, we have the mini variant drawer. Now the mini variant drawer, all it does is it provides you an initial amount of width that you want to appear for the actual drawer. So right here, without even toggling this, we see a little bit of the drawer open right here, but only the icons. If I click on this, then it opens up the entire thing. After that, we have the permanent drawer. This is exactly what it means. It's a permanent drawer. There's no way to close it. It'll stay there as is forever. After that, it's the same thing, but on the right side. And we can also clip it underneath the app bar if you wanted. So in regards to the actual drawer API, it's pretty simple. There's not as many props available to you as there is in such as like a button or a text input. You have a couple such as anchor, children, on, close, open, elevation. Pretty basic stuff to understand. And we'll be working with most of this stuff today. So without further ado, let's get our hands dirty and let's work with this component. Alrighty, so last time we left off, we were working on this app bar right here. If I click on the hamburger icon, it shows this ugly looking drop down list right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my VS Code app, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import all of the stuff that we need. So the first thing is we're going to import a airline seat flat icon and an agriculture icon for our links, since these are the most random icons I could think of. After that, we are importing styled and used theme. So what styled and used themes allows us to do is it allows us to be able to style whatever we want using the Material UI's methodology. And so what we can do with this is that we can actually create our own tag, our own React tag that holds all of our styles that is attached to a certain type of HTML element. So in this case, underneath my const pages, I'll show you what I mean. Underneath my const pages, I'm going to do drawer header, and remember that since we are targeting a React tag, it has to be capital, is equal to styled, and inside of these smooth curly braces, we're going to target an HTML tag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target div, and then I'll do smooth curly braces, and then really curly braces. So theme, arrow function, and inside of here is where we're going to provide all of our styling basically. So the styling for this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'll do display, we'll set it to be flex. After that, I'll do align items to be center. We'll do padding, and we're gonna be grabbing the theme padding that's provided to us from Material UI. And what that's gonna look like is we'll do theme dot padding 0 and 1, and after that we have to do dot 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 theme dot mixins dot toolbar. This is necessary to be able to keep all of our excuse me, this is necessary for all content to be below our app bar. And so after that, we'll do justify content, and we'll make it flex end. This is coming straight out of the actual documentation as well, so if you think this looks familiar, that's where it's coming from. So it looks like we have a little bit of an issue. I think I forgot to provide curly braces into there. There we go. So now we have our custom React tag right there ready to use. Alrighty, now what we're going to do is we're going to define our drawer width for our actual drawer. So I'll do const drawer width is equal to, and the base drawer width is always 240, but since we're rebellious, we'll do 241. And inside of my app bar example right here, what I'll do is I'm going to create a new useState variable, which is going to be responsible for our handle open and set open, basically. So we'll do const open and set open is equal to use state. Initially, when a user loads the app, we want to set it to be false. And what I'll do is I'll create two new handle open and handle close functions. So const handle drawer open is equal to arrow function, and inside of there we'll do set open to be true, and vice versa. So this time we'll do false. So const handle drawer close is equal to set open to be false, like so. And since we're not going to be using the actual drop down, we can get rid of this handle open menu right here. We can also get rid of this right here as well. And if we scroll down, we have a whole bunch of stuff here that's using the handle open and handle close nav menu from our previous tutorial. We don't need any of that anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this icon button handle open nav menu with this handle drawer open function right here. So when we click it, it'll run this function instead of our previous one. And we can get rid of this anchor L nav as well, and we can also get rid of this as well and this as well. And since we don't actually need the entire menu, we can just get rid of the entire menu itself. And we're also going to get rid of that. Perfect. Now if we go into the app, we should see it still run, but if we click on it, nothing's going to happen because we removed all of our previous code. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and actually build out our drawer. So at the bottom of my box right here, what I'll do is I will define our drawer tag, and how that's going to look is going to be drawer, like so. And inside of here, what I'll do is I'm going to define our styling props. So I'll do sx is equal to width, and that width is going to be equate to our drawer width that we set up there, the 241. And after that, whoops. And after that, what we'll do is we'll do flex shrink is equal to 0. Looks like we might have not imported this. Let's go ahead and import it. There we go. And so after that, what we'll do is we're going to target the actual drawer paper itself. So what we'll do is and dot target the class name MUI drawer dash paper width to be drawer width box sizing, and we'll set that as border box, like so. And after that, whoops, and after all that styling, what we're going to do is we're going to define what kind of variant we want. So since we want this to be able to open and close outside of clicking the backdrop, what we'll do is we'll do variant is equal to temporary. After that, I'll do anchor. Where do we want our actual drawer to be, either left or right? We want it to be on the left side. And we'll do on close. So this is going to be basically a function that when we click on the backdrop, it'll close the actual app drawer. So we'll do set open to be false. Oh wait, whoops. We actually defined the function right here, so I'll just call that function right here. Like so. Perfect. Alrighty, and on open, we're just going to call open, like so. Perfect. Alrighty, so now if I go into the app, and if I click on our button right here, ooh, we have a drawer. There's nothing inside of it, but we have a drawer, and it's 241 pixels wide. Perfect. So let's go ahead and actually populate it with some stuff and use our drawer header tag that we made earlier. Alrighty, so going back into my app, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the drawer component tag, drawer header tag that we made earlier, and inside of there I'm going to put a icon button. This is going to be responsible for closing our drawer on the click of a button. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give it an on click function right here, and we'll call our handle drawer close right there. And what we'll do is we're going to use theme.direction is equal to LTR, and here's where we can define our icon that we're going to use. So since we imported 2 icons only, we'll just use both of them right here. So I'll use agriculture icon, else we'll use the airline flat seat icon, and it's saying that theme.direction is not defined. So at the very top of my app or example right here, we're going to define it. So the const theme is equal to use theme. And now if we go back into the app, we should see nothing because it crashed. Let's find out why it crashed. So theme.padding is not a function. My bad, it should be theme.spacing, not theme.padding. So let's go ahead and add spacing to be 0 and 1. And so now if we go into the app, we click on this hamburger icon, we see our tractor right here, and I click it, it closes our drawer. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and actually populate it with some list items right here. Alrighty, so going back into my app, underneath my drawer header right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a divider. And underneath my divider is where we're going to be rendering our list that we made in the previous tutorial. So I'll do list, and inside of the list I'll do curly braces, we'll do pages dot map, and we'll do text and index. Well, instead of text, let's call it links, because there will be links after this. So I'll do links and arrow function, and inside of the arrow function we're going to do return, and inside of the return, this is where we're going to return each individual item. So I'll do list item, and this is going to be equated to a button, which will have a key of index, and then inside of the list item we'll do a list item icon, and we're going to be using those 2 icons that we imported earlier. So what we'll do is if the index is divisible as a whole number by 2, we will render our agriculture icon, else we will render a airline, we'll render an airline seat flat icon like so. Perfect. And so we actually want the actual link text as well. So what we'll do is for that, all we have to do is a list item text, and we have to give it a primary key prop, and for that prop we'll just give it link like that. And if we go back into the app, we should see that if we refresh the page, we go into it, we see our card, carousel, and table, we have our back button working, and if we click on the backdrop right here, it also closes. Awesome. Alrighty, so open up the app that we've been building in the last video, and the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to install our dependency. And to do that, all we have to do is npm install react-router-dom at 6. So this will install version 6. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create all of our components that we're going to be routing to. So inside of my components folder right here, I'll create a new file, and I'll call it card.js. And I'll create another one, and I'll call it carousel.js. And another one, I'll call it home.js. And finally table.js. And I'm going to populate this stuff with some basic code. So I'm just going to copy whatever we have inside of our app.js file right here, and I'll put it inside of here. I'll clean out all of this content right inside of here, and I'll call this card example. We'll get rid of this as well, and we'll get rid of all of that. So we just want a basic clean React component right here. So I'll just do card example like that, and I'll just go ahead and copy this into my other files. So I'll do carousel example, and after that I'll do home example, and finally table example. Alrighty, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my index.js file right here, and what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and import browser router from React Router DOM that we installed as a dependency. So I'll do browser router from React router DOM. And basically what this allows us to do is there's a HTML5 history API which basically replaces the state, pushes the state, and pops the state of a URL. So it allows us to be able to actually go to a certain component, and it all encapsulates that in a browser router tag. So to use that, all we're going to do is we're going to put it right here. So I'll do browser router right there, and I'll engulf the app like so. And that's all we have to do. Alrighty, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to assign all of our app links in our actual app to go to the certain pathways that we want. So I'm going to go in my appbar.js, and the first thing that we're going to change is our very first pages.map file right here, pages.map function right here, and inside of the button tag, what I will do is I'm going to give it a component, and I'm going to make it equal to capital L link, like so. And oops, not from Material UI. We want to do it from React router DOM, and next thing, we wanted to go to our slash pathway, our specific pathway, and the pathways that we're going with are going to be these exact ones right here: card, carousel, table, and home. Home is not here, but we'll show that later. So inside of these curly braces, I'm going to do backticks, and I'll do $, curly braces, and inside of here I'll do page, and I'll set a slash right before there. And if we save that, we can't really test this out right now, but we'll test it out later. After that, I'm going to scroll lower in our next pages.map, and inside of here, inside of my list item, since we made it look like a button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it as a component, and we're going to make it equal to a link tag, and we'll do two, same thing, curly braces, backticks, slash, $, curly braces, and we'll take it to link. And that's all we need to do for that. So now when we click on our actual links, it'll take us to that pathway, but we actually need it to change the component in our actual app. So let's go ahead and do that now. So to do that, I'm going to go back into my app.js file right here, and now we're going to think of our app.js file as a main hub that's going to store all of our routes to direct to each component. So we're actually going to get rid of all of this stuff right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a tag called routes from React router DOM. This is going to encapsulate all of our different routes. So each routes will have a route tag. So I'll do route like so with a self-closing brace. And the first one I'll do path is equal to slash. I think it's probably not imported. Let's go ahead and import it from React router DOM like so. And we want it to go to a certain component. So we're going to do element is equal to, we'll do home example. So now what we just did right here, we're saying that the slash pathway, when you initially enter a website, whenever you go to slash, it's going to always take you to the home example component, which we made right here. Let me change the name right here. So I'll do home. I'll do carousel here, card, and I'll do table. There we go. And for the other components, it'll be the exact same thing. So I'll just copy this and paste it 3 more times. And the next one we'll do is cards. After that, it'll be carousel, and finally table. And for this example, it'll be card example. This one will be carousel example, and now this will be table example. So now let's go ahead and test out our app and see if this works. Alrighty, so on initial load, we have the slash pathway right here, and it takes us to the home example, which is perfect. And if I were to go in the drawer and I click on cards, it takes us to the card component, carousel component, and table component. Perfect. Now before we conclude the tutorial, we also have to check these app links right here. So it takes us to card, carousel, and table. Perfect. Alrighty, so I've opened up the documentation for the chips component, and they're very simple to understand. Most front-end libraries already have them implemented into their components, such as AntDesign, Material UI, Mantine. All those libraries have chips available. And so what chips are is a small amount of information that can be either selected, filtered, have trigger actions, or enter a basic amount of information in a small compact chip. So this is one of the examples that they have right here. These are two different variants that they have. There's a chip that is basically filled, and there's one that has a simple outline. So like I was saying earlier, there's different types of actions that you can apply to your chips. You can make them clickable, deletable, you can make them link to someplace else, and you can also have different types of icons for your delete icons. So let me just show you what you have right here. So it's really simple. If you want to make a clickable chip, all you have to do is apply the onClick property, and then it can be clickable, and inside of the function you can apply whatever you want. You can either have a console log, you can make a delete, you can do whatever you want. After that, we have the deletable prop. So if we want to delete a chip, we can add the on delete right here, and it'll add a automatic icon, this X icon right here, to all of our chips that we have the on delete props for. And after that, we can do both clickable and deletable. So they're using both on click and on delete prop right here. After that, we can also link our chip if we wanted. So it's simple. We can change it to a simple component and anchor tag, and then we can send it to wherever we want. And after that, we can also do a custom delete icon like I was talking about earlier if we wanted to. So in this case, I have a check mark and a trash can. After that, we have some adornments if we wanted to apply to our chips. So basically, we can add icons if we wanted to our chips besides the deletable icons. So in this case, they have a simple avatar icon right here. And the way that you would use this, all you would have to do is you have to apply the avatar prop, and then you can give it either a basic avatar with a letter right here, or you can give it a custom avatar with an image. We'll be covering avatars later in this course, so don't worry about it if you don't understand how to work with this for now. After that, they have a simple example, which is an icon. And we have some coloring if we want it available to our chips. So we have primary, success, info, and all the other colors that are available for this library. And after that, we can also apply sizes to our chips if you wanted. All you have to use is size prop right here. And this is what we're actually going to be building right here, this chips array. And we're going to have our own custom avatars, deletables, and custom coloring into it as well. But don't worry about this right now. I'll show you guys how to implement this later. And finally, we have the chip playground. This is fairly similar to how you would see something in the Mantine library, where you can actually live edit a chip and you can apply it into your app right down here, this code. And lastly, scrolling to the very bottom, we have the API right here. This API contains all of the imports, component name, and props, and the CSS is available for this component. So there's a whole lot of different props available to us. We'll cover some of them in this tutorial. And after that, we have the CSS right here, and just a simple demo as well. So without further ado, let's actually go ahead and get our hands dirty with this component, and let's work with it. Alrighty, so I've opened up the app that we've been building in the last couple of videos, and the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to connect our routes. So we have a new component made for our chips component. So what I'm going to do is inside of my components folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call it chips.js. And just so we have some content, I'm going to copy whatever we have from our car.js file and paste it into here. We'll change the names right here just so we have some distinctions. So I'll do chips example, and I'll type in here chips, just so we know that everything is connected properly. And after that, inside of our app bar, next thing is we need to apply it into our pages array right here. So I'll just do chips like so. And finally, scrolling down into the app.js file, we're going to apply our route right here. So I'll copy this route and I'll just paste it down here, and I'll call it chips, and the element is going to be chips example like so. And so now if we go back into our app, we should see a chips array right here, a chips link right here, and it guides us probably to the proper component. Let's just make sure our drawer is working as well. Perfect. Alrighty, so let's go back into our app and let's go ahead and import a simple chip into our library. So how do you import a chip? It's really simple. All you have to do is use the chip tag available to us from the library. You can either do a self-closing brace or a double close brace like that right there, but I'm gonna do a self-closing brace for now. And what I'll do is I'm gonna give it a variant, and we'll give it the variant of outline, and it looks like we don't actually have that imported. There we go. And just so we have some information, I'll type in here label, and for this label, the information we'll give it, let's call it basic chip boy. And if we go back into our app, we should see a basic chip right here, basic chip boy. Perfect. But if you wanted to make our chip clickable and deletable, all you would have to do is you would have to use a prop on delete to delete and get that X icon. But if you wanted to do a clickable link, all you would have to do is on click, And that's about it. So you would need to actually apply some sort of functionality inside of here, some function inside of this. So I'll just do const on delete is equal to just an empty function, and I'll do the same thing for on click. So I'll just do on click like so. Let's go ahead and apply those functions right here. So on delete and on click. There we go. And so now if we go back into our app, we'll see that we can click our actual chip, and we also have the icon right here. So now let's actually go ahead and make that example that I showed you in the beginning of the video. And it's really simple. Don't get intimidated by it. It's very, very easy. So at the very top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a useState variable, and it's going to contain an object, which is going to contain an array of objects, which in those objects is going to contain all of our information for our chips. So what I'll do is const chip data and set chip data is equal to use state, and it'll be an array, and inside of here we can give it an object like so. And so what I'll do is I'll give it a key initially of 0, we'll give it a label, and we'll just put in some basic technology. So I'll do angular, I'll do color. So remember how we saw in our API that we have different types of colors available to us. In this case, what I'll do is I'll give it a color of red, and I'll give it an icon. And for icon, let's select analytics outlined like so. And we'll just go ahead and copy this object a few times. Let's copy it 5 times. And for this key, I'll call it 1, 2, 3, and 4. For this label, I'll call it React. For this one, I'll call it WordPress, PHP, and let's call this one Java. And for the color, let's do blue, since React is blue. WordPress, I think it's also white and blue, so I'll just put in here, let's put in here gray. Why not? Let's do gray. And PHP, I don't actually remember if there's an icon for PHP. I'm guessing it's like pink or something. Java, it's basically hell, so I'll just put in here black. I don't like Java. I do not. I'm not a huge fan of it. But anyways, so email outlined. For the next icon, let's call it face to tone. Let's do a phone, Android icon. And finally, let's see if there's a Java icon. We have a JavaScript icon. It's close enough, but they're not at all the same thing. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create our ability to actually delete a chip whenever we run this onDelete function right here. So all we have to do for that is we need to give it a parameter initially of chip to delete. So this will select the certain chip that we selected to delete from the actual chips array object right here. And what I'll do is I'll give it another function call like so. And inside of there, what we'll do is we're going to be setting our chip data to be able to filter depending on the key that we're giving it. So if the chip.key is not equal to the chip.delete key, filter it out. Alrighty, now that we've created our delete functionality, let's go ahead and actually loop through all of our objects of chips right here. So what I'll do is I'll get rid of this chip variant, and what I'll do is I will create a simple map function. So I'll do chip.data.map, and inside of the map I'll just do data, and we'll call a function, and I'll do return curly braces, and inside of there, this is where we're going to be listing all of our chips. So I'll do list item, and inside of the list item, not IT, item, we'll give it a key is equal to data.key, and inside of here is where we are going to be rendering our chips. So I'll do chips with a self-closing brace like so, and the props that we're going to give it, let's start off with the icon. So for that I'll just do icon is equal to data.icon. After that let's do a label, and for the label, really simple, data.label. And on the onDelete functionality, what we're going to do is onDelete. We're gonna wanna run our onDelete function, so I'll do onDelete. This calls our function, and inside of there we have to pass the actual chip that we want to delete. So I'll do data, and after that we'll do style. And for the style, we'll give it a background color, and we'll call data.color like so. Perfect. Alrighty, so testing it out, we can actually see that we have our chips rendered right here. We have the different types of technologies with the actual icons and the delete functionality. So if I click on X, it'll delete the Angular. If I click on this one, it'll delete PHP. This will delete Java. This will delete React. Now let's go ahead and actually specify a certain label. So like, let's say if it's equal to Angular, we don't want to allow the user to delete it. Or let's say if it's equal to WordPress, we don't want to display a certain icon. So that's really simple. All we would have to do is we can use a ternary operator for this case. All we would have to do is, let's say we want to target the actual label. So I'll do data.label is equal to, let's say it was equal to Angular. And initially, if it's equal to Angular, then we'll just display as undefined. But if it's not, then we'll actually display the icons. And for the label, let's say if the label is actually equal to React, let's say we want our label to be called let's say not React, to confuse the user as much as possible. And if it's not equal to React, I'll just do data.label like so. And for the onDelete functionality, this is also really simple. Let's say we want to not delete PHP, and all we have to do is data.label. We can select if it's equal to PHP, and if it is equal to PHP, let's say we can just do undefined. But if it is not, undefined like so, and if it's not, then we'll delete it. So now if I go into the app, we'll see that some of them have the actual deletable property. Some of them actually have different text. So this one used to be React, but now it's not React. And this one doesn't have an icon. Alrighty, before we conclude this tutorial, let's just go ahead and quickly put everything in one line and in the center. So right below the div tag, I'll just put a paper tag. And this paper tag is just going to contain a simple styling property with display flex and justify content center like so. Perfect. Alrighty, that concludes this tutorial. It was fairly simple. I hope that you now understand how to work with the chip component. Today's video we'll be talking about how to work with the card component in this library. Now by the end of this tutorial, we'll have made this little project right here. It's an array of my favorite Naruto characters, and I understand that they don't look anything alike them. This is the only copyright image I could find without Funimation copyright striking this video. If I scroll a little bit lower, we'll see all the characters, and one of them is a little sus. And this is also a dynamic grid, so if I were to zoom out a little bit, we'll see them also increase and decrease in grid size. If I click on this arrow, it'll show a small description and a credit of where the image is from. Perfect. So without further ado, let's get into it. So before we do get our hands absolutely filthy with this component, we do have to run through the documentation really quickly and just learn about that a little bit. So cards are really useful if you want to display a certain amount of UI information, such as statistics, images, image descriptions, all that sort of stuff. You're able to do that with the card component. Now this is the basic card that they have right here. It's a simple title, a little bit of content, and a button. And so the way that you would use this card component is really simple. All you would need is a card tag followed by a card content tag within it, and then within that you can put whatever you want. You can put typography tags, you can put a video, you can put images, whatever you want. And there's two different types of variants. You have an outline variant and a regular variant. This first variant right here is the regular one, and down here is the outlined one right here. After that, they give you an example of how to work with the complex interaction. Basically, all they're showing is that when you click on this arrow, it'll show a lot more information. And this is actually what we're going to be implementing in our project today. After that, we have the media tag right here. What they're doing is that they're just allowing a image to be hosted into their card. Now, some images have different sizes. With the image media tag, which is available right here, card media, we're able to actually fit it within our tag itself. Next thing we have is a primary action area. So what this allows us to do is that we can actually click on the entire surface of this card. So wherever we click, it is clickable, and we can run an event to do whatever we want. So let's say if we click on this card, it would open a modal that displays more information about this lizard. After that, there's another example. So we're actually able to supplement only a little bit of the card area to be clicked. So in this case, only this area is clickable, and down here is just a share button that's not clickable. Now at the very bottom, we have our APIs. We're not going to be covering every single one of these APIs. We'll be using a couple of them, but basically all they have is a CSS, the types of imports, and all the different types of stylings that we can do for each of these tags. So without further ado, let's go ahead and actually work with this component. Alrighty, so I've opened up the app that we've been building in the last couple of videos, and I've opened up the card component that we made in the very first routing video. So what I'm going to do, the very first thing is, inside of my function card example, is I'm going to create a simple useState variable. This is going to be responsible for toggling our little description area that we saw in the beginning. So we'll do const expanded, and we'll do set expanded. We'll set it as a useState variable set as false initially, and let's go ahead and import it from React. After that, I'll just do const handle expanded, and we'll set that to be set expanded to be not expanded, like so. Now we've handled our function code that we need to be able to toggle our description and our button. So after that, what I'm going to do is I created a card array of objects that's going to hold all of our information for our cards. The link to this is in the description down below, so you can copy that if you want. But what it does, it contains a title, a description, an image, and a credit of where I got this image from. They are copyright free, but it is very important to give credit to who actually originally made it. Alright, now let's go ahead and actually deal with creating our grid that is responsive to our window, so it will collapse and uncollapse at certain points. So I'm going to get rid of this card component text right here, and I'll create a simple div tag, and inside of the div tag I'm giving it a style, display grid, grid template columns, a grid gap, justify content, center, align center, and I'm getting rid of this background color right here. This is actually coming straight from GitHub Copilot, so that's really interesting that AI was able to make that automatically by itself. Alrighty, now that we've taken care of all the miscellaneous stuff that we needed, we've created our handle toggle function, we've created our array of objects for our data, and we've created our grid. What I'm going to do is, inside of my grid divs right here, I'm going to do curly braces, and I'll do cards.map, so I'll loop over our cards array of objects, and I'll give it a parameter of card. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create our card itself. So I'll do card, and we'll give it a style, just so we have a max width. I'll do max width, and at least let's do 200 pixels for now. And inside of there, we'll do card content. And what this will do is it'll host all of our content that we want for our cards, like our title, description, image, and all the other information that we have. But in this case, since we're only going to be storing our card title in this card content tag right here, I'll just do typography, give it a variant of h5, component h2, and give it card.title like so. And I'll also import typography like so. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to actually import our images. And you might remember how to do that. We talked about it. We're going to be using the card media tag with a self-closing brace, and I'll give it an image. We'll do card.image like so, and we also want to give it our component as well, so I'll do component, and we'll make it equal to image like so. Perfect. Now if we go into our app, we should see our array of cards right here. So we have Kakashi, Naruto, Itachi, Sasuke, and Madara with their images and their title. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and actually create our handle toggle button. So underneath my card media, what I'll do is I'll do a simple expand more icon, and inside of there I'll do on click, and on click all we're going to do is we're going to run our handle expand function that we made right up here. That just sets expanded to be the opposite of whatever it is originally. After that, what I'll do is I'll make a collapse tag, so I'll do collapse, and I'll do in is equal to expanded with a closing brace like so. And inside of there, what I'll do is I'll give it card content. So what this card content will host is going to host all of our description and our button information. So I'll do typography, and I'll give it a body variant of 2 with a component tag of p, so it'll be paragraph, and we'll give it card description, and we'll close the typography tag right there. After that, we'll give it a basic button, so I'll do button, and inside of there I'll give it a variant, and we'll make it equal to contained. We'll give it a color, primary, href. We're going to actually send it to the actual the person who made the actual image, and we'll give it a target of underscore blank so it opens in a new tab. After that, we'll just type in your credit like so. Let's go ahead and import it from Material UI. And now if we check it out, and so now if we click on any of these drop downs, they're all going to open up like we intended, and we can see a small description. And if we click on any of these buttons, it'll show us the credit of who made the actual image. Alrighty then, so I've opened up the documentation for the rating component, and we're going to quickly run over this just so we have a pretty good understanding of how to work with this before we do get our hands dirty. So ratings are really simple. According to Material UI, ratings provide insights regarding others' opinions and experiences and can allow the user to submit a rating of their own. So if we scroll down below, we'll see a few examples of the basic rating system. They have controlled, read-only, disabled, and no rating given. The controlled rating system, all it does is that it can control all the other ones if we wanted, and we can actually select any sort of rating that we want. After that, the read-only, it does not allow us to be able to edit a rating. It's only a read, so we can't select any of them. After that, we have the disabled. It's sort of like read-only, but it's grayed out. After that, we have no rating given, so no matter what, you cannot select a rating. It'll always stay at 0. And if you look right below that, we will see that it's really simple to use. All you would have to do is import rating, give it a name, a value, and an on change. So if we wanted to change the actual state of the rating, we can just do it like that. And after that, we can see that the different states, so we have name, read only, disabled, and no value isn't a state per se. It's you can just do value is equal to null, so it'll always stay as no value at that point. After that, we have rating precision. Now let's say we're absolute comedians and we wanted to test our comedic skills here. What we could do is we can actually do 10 stars, and then we can define a specific precision we wanted. And because we are comedians, we can just do 6.9, and it will show exactly 6.9 stars. And this is how to use it. We can give it a default value that's equal to the initial value. So initially this is equal to 2.5 stars, but if you want a 6.9, we just have to type in your 6.9. After that, we have the hover feedback. So we can actually hover on certain values, and on, let's say at 2 stars, we can show a certain hover value right here. If we're on 5 stars, it'll show excellent plus, which is really cool. And if we scroll lower, we will see our different sizes that we have available to us. So by default, it'll always be medium. So we don't, if we wanted to do a medium rating group, we would have to define nothing. But if we wanted a size of small or large, we'd have to use a size prop and define which one. After that, we have the customization. This is actually what we're going to be implementing into our app today and using this and working with it. And after that, we scroll to the very bottom. We can see our API right here. Now, I know I skipped over a whole bunch of stuff right here, but this is not as important as the main concept of how to work with a rating component. But if we go into the rating API, we can see exactly how to import it. All you have to do is import rating from Material UI, or do it like that. After that, we can do our component name, what kind of props we have available to us. There's a few of them. Well, there's a lot of them actually. And then after that, we have the CSS. So if we want to target a certain element in our rating system, we can do it with this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and actually work with this component and get our hands filthy. Alrighty then, so I've opened up my VS Code editor, and inside of here, the first thing that we have to do is we got to create our route for our rating system. So inside of my components folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call it rating.js. What is HS? That's not even a thing. JS, there we go. And inside of there, just so we have some basic content, what I'll do is I'll just copy whatever we have inside of our, whoops, not in there, whatever we have inside of our chips file, just so we have some basic content. And we'll change the name of chips example, and we'll call it rating example, like so. And within our app bar, I'll add another parameter, so I'll just do rating. And within my app.js file is where we have to import our actual route. So here I'll call it rating, and so we change this too, so now it's rating example, import it. And now if we go back into our app, we should see rating right there, and it shows our rating chips. Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and actually work with this component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out all this information within my div tag right here, and I'll get rid of all of these functions, and we'll clear out this as well. And within our div, what I'll do is I'll import rating from Material UI, like so. And what we'll do is we'll give it a default value of, let's say, 2, and we won't give it any other values. So right now what we will see is we will see a total of 5 stars and a default value of 2, which is not appearing. Let's see what's happening. Default checked. Whoops, should be default value. There we go. And now if you look at it, it should look at, we should see 2. There we go, perfect. Alrighty, so now since we are comedic geniuses of the 21st century, what we have to do is we will set a max of 10. So we'll have a maximum of 10 stars showing, and we'll do precision. I will set the precision to be about 0.1, as precise as possible. And now here's where the comedy comes in. Our default value is going to be 6.9. And now if we go back into our app, we will see 10 stars. And it's very difficult to see, but let me zoom in. We will see 6.9 stars. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.9. You can see that little gray spot right there. I can't zoom in any further, but it's right there though. Alrighty, so now you guys might be wondering is how do we use a custom icon like we saw in the beginning of this tutorial? Well, let's go ahead and talk about how to do that. So first and foremost, you would need an SVG file for this to work. There are other ways to do it, but the best way I found is to just use an SVG. The quality doesn't get reduced or anything, so that's perfect for us. So the images that I went and chose were those 2 Naruto images in the beginning, and I imported them into my assets folder right here as SVG files. So this one is the blank one without any coloration, and this one has some coloration. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to convert these SVGs into React components basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy one of them right here, and going back to my Google Chrome, I've opened something called SVGR Playground. I've already added the link to this in the description down below. It's really useful to convert SVGs into a React component. And so what I'm going to do is on my left side, I'm going to paste my SVG input, and output is what we have right here, our SVG convert into a component. And after that, I'm going to go back into my rating.js file, and right underneath my function, what we'll do is we'll do const colored Naruto icon is equal to, we'll give it a prop, oops, let's do it like this, prop arrow function, and we'll do return, and instead of the return, this is where we'll paste our code. So now we have our colored Naruto example. Let's see what it's yelling at us about. It is saying that it is used but never assigned. Props is not defined. Let's see here. Oh, it's props. I said prop. There we go. Alrighty. Now let's go ahead and actually add our basic Naruto icons. We'll do const Naruto icon. We'll do props arrow function, and we'll do return. And same thing, I'm going to open up my basic Naruto face right here. I'm going to go back into my converter. I'll paste it into the input, and in the output we have exactly what we want. Going back into my app, I'll paste it right into here, and that should be about it. Let's see why this is yelling at us for. So saying that path, that should be fine. Alright, so now the way that we would use this is really simple. All we have to do is we would use the exact same rating tag. So we'll just do rating, and inside of there we can define our basic icon that's filled in and our empty icon. So let's say our filled in icon, we'll give it the colored Naruto icon, and if it's empty, so if the rating is incomplete, we'll just do the, I think it was Naruto icon. There we go. And we'll give it some more values. I'll just do default value, and we'll give it, let's say 2, and we'll give it a precision of 0.5. There we go. And now if we look into our app, we will see we have our icons, well, our custom icons. Alrighty, so I've opened up the documentation for this component, and what Material UI talks about alerts is it just says that you can display a short message that attracts the user's attention without interrupting their task. Alrighty, so if we scroll lower, we'll see some basic alerts in action. We have the error alert, that's red, a warning alert, orange or yellow, We have the primary alert, which is blue. We have a success alert, which is green. And by default, if you don't specify a specific type of alert, it will always be a success alert. Now, the way that you actually do specify an alert is you would have to use the alert tag right here. Within it, you give it a prop of severity, and you can give it either warning, error warning, info, or success. And by default, if you don't give it any severity, it'll always be success. So let's say you wanted to display a title and a description for your alerts. It's really simple. All you would have to do is use the alert title prop and then just type whatever you want inside of it. So in this case, they're using alert title, giving an error, which is this right here, this title. And then whatever else outside of that alert title right here is going to be your description. And after that, you can have some actions to your alerts if you wanted. So if you wanted an X or an undo button. Now, if you only wanted to provide an X, all you would have to do is you would have to use the onClose prop right here, and you have to give it a callback, and then inside of there you can do whatever you want. But if you don't do anything within the callback, it'll still render the X like so. But if you wanted to provide a custom button, let's say instead of an undo button you wanted to use a specific image, for example, what you can do is you can give it an alert action prop right here, and then inside of there you can provide whatever component you want. So if you want an image, we can use the image component that Material UI provides, give it the image, and then we can give it an onClick property, which will do the exact same thing as a regular onClose prop does. And after that, we have the collapse transition component right here. Now what this allows us to do is we can collapse our alert and reopen it if you wanted, and it's really simple to use. All you would have to do is use the collapse component that Material UI provides, and whatever you put inside this collapse component will collapse it. So in this case, all they have is an alert. When you click on this button, it'll collapse it. It'll collapse the alert. Alrighty, so after that we have the icons prop. Now this is something that's fairly easy to understand. By default, every single alert icon will be a check mark. It's not going to be this exact one, but it'll be fairly simple to this, fairly close to this. If you wanted to provide a custom icon, all you would have to use is the icon prop right here. Instead of the curly braces, you define what kind of icon you want. But let's say you didn't want an icon, all you would have to do is just give it false. So you do have some variants available to you, like most components. In this component, you have two different variants. You have an outline and a filled. This is what the outline one looks like, and the way that you would use it. And the way you would use it, all you have to do is define the variant prop, give it the outline property, and that's it. If you wanted to use the filled one, it's the exact same thing. All you would have to do is variant filled. And after that we have the toast. They don't have a toast example right here, but you can use Material UI's toast components to display alerts. We're not going to talk about that in this tutorial. And after that we have the color prop. So let's say we didn't want our error, warning, success, or info. We wanted to use a custom color that Material UI provides. We can use the color prop, and in this case they're using info, so that's why it's blue. And they are using the severity success. So that's why you see this success icon right there. And now if we scroll lower, we'll see the two APIs that we have. We have alert and alert title. Inside of alert, it shows us how to import it, what kind of props is available to us, and all the CSS that's involved as well. Now let's go ahead and actually work with this component and get our hands dirty. Alrighty, so I've opened up the app that we've been building in the last couple of videos, and I'll be working in the home.js file in this tutorial. And the first thing that we have to do is we need to use a custom styling method that Material UI provides. So we have to install that package. So I'll do npm I at MUI/styles and let that work its magic. Alright, so now I'm just going to go ahead and run the app, and while that's happening, what I'm going to do is right at the very top right here, we're going to go ahead and import make styles from at MUI/styles, and we'll do import alert from at MUI/material. Alrighty, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this home example content inside of this div, and I'll import a simple alert tag. So I'll do the alert tag right here, and instead of there I'll give it a description. We'll call it success tag, and for that we'll give it a severity, and we'll make it equal to success, like so. And so looking at it, here's our simple alert. It spans the entire actual browser. but it's a simple success tag. Now let's make some CSS changes, and we'll change up this icon as well. So to do the CSS changes, I'm going to give this alert a class name. So I'll do class name. In curly braces, I'll do classes dot, and I'll call this success alert, and better name is custom alert, like that. There we go. And so it's saying classes not defined. So to define that, all we have to do is const classes is equal to use styles, curly braces, call the function, and we now have to define use styles. And to do that, all you have to do is const use styles is equal to make styles, and inside of here we'll just do custom alert. And now within here is where we can provide all of our custom CSS for our alert. So let's go ahead and work on that gradient that we saw in the very beginning of this tutorial. So what I'll do is I'll give it a background, and for this background I'll do quotes, and inside of there I'll do linear gradient, and we'll do to left bottom. So I'll go left to bottom, and we'll give it a gradient of hashtag F12711, and we'll do hashtag F5A F19, and all this does is it gives you like a yellow to red gradient. And so now if we save this, we go back into our app, we'll see we have a pretty cool gradient. We have, I think it's orange to yellow, red to yellow. Now if we wanted to provide a custom icon, that is pretty simple. All you have to do is give it a prop of icon, curly braces, and inside of here is where we can define our icon. So let's do something like ice cream. Let's see, is there anything? Ice cream. We have ice cream two-tone icon, perfect. And just so we can actually visibly see it, we will do and dot MUI alert dash icon, which targets the CSS property for the icons inside of this alert. And for this, we'll just do color is equal to white, simple white. And so now if we look at it, we'll see that we have a white colored ice cream. I'm just going to quickly add a little bit more changes. I'll just do margin auto, and we'll just give it a width of like 500 pixels, just so it's not stretched all the way out. Perfect. Alrighty, so that concludes this tutorial. It was fairly straight to the point. Alerts are a pretty easy component to get a hang of once you know what's happening with it. Alrighty, so I've opened up the documentation for this component, and if we scroll down, the very first thing that we see here is a basic table. Now this table has nothing special to it. It's just a header with a bunch of rows, and that's it. This is actually what we're going to be building in our tutorial, but after that we have the data table. Now the really useful thing about this data grid table is that if we have a large amount of data, we're able to use a data table and we can provide it in a more rigid structure so then our users can view all the data in a very concise form. And the really cool thing about this is that we can actually filter through our headers. So if we wanted ascending and descending by first name or last name or age, we can do that. And after that, if we wanted to save some room vertically, we can also use a dense table. This basically removes all the extra padding and makes it as small as possible. After that, we can do the sorting and selecting if we wanted. Like I was saying earlier with the data table, we were able to sort it by order, so ascending or descending depending on the header, and we're also able to select it. So if I were to click on one of these rows, we can see that we have 2 selected, and then we can do a certain action to those 2 selected if we wanted. Now in this case, this delete button doesn't actually work, but does give you a little bit of an imagination of what is possible with selecting a row. And after that, we can also provide some pagination if we wanted. If we had, let's say, a data set of 50 rows and we only want to display 5 rows per page, we can do that, or 10 or 25. And then after that, we can also provide a pagination. So right now we're on page 1 to 5 of 13, then we go to 6 to 10, and then 11 to 13. Now for customization. Customization, in my opinion, is pretty good in this component. If you wanted to customize basically anything you wanted, you're able to do that. Let's say you wanted to customize the 5th row right here, and you wanted to only make this 3.9 protein grams to be a color purple if it's greater or equal to, let's say, 2. You can do that. That's the most specific example I can think of, but you can do a lot more things with the customization. You can in fact go into if you go to the very bottom, you can see the API, and inside of here you can see exactly which type of thing you want to customize. So let's say if you want to customize a table cell, we go in here and it provides us exactly all of the different types of CSS styling classes that we can target, and there's a whole lot of customization that's available to us for this component. Now, like I said earlier, we will be covering some customization for our table after we go through the documentation. And if we scroll even lower, we'll see the sticky header example right here. It's exactly what you think it is. All it is the header is sticky no matter how far you are scrolling up or down the table, so it doesn't leave the screen no matter what. Now let's say you wanted to group a bunch of headers together. How would you do that? It's pretty simple. All you would need to do is use the table head tag and encapsulate table rows within inside of it. And then this is the example they give you right here. We have two different headers right here where we have country is grouped with name and ISO code, and we have details assumed with is grouped with population, size, and density. Now this is where all of Material UI tables get really funky. Let's say you wanted to append a little bit more information that you can't quite fit into the table itself without making it too long. Well, you can actually collapse a table. So let's say in this case we have a frozen yogurt right here. If you click on this arrow, we can see a whole bunch of extra information, another table in fact, with more information such as date, customer, amount, and total price. And it's fairly easy to use. If you click on this show source code and we scroll down, we'll see exactly how they're using it right here in a collapse tag, and then just provide exactly what they want inside here. So it's another table, table head, row, table cell, and all the information that's associated to that specific row. So now let's say you're making a invoice generator app where you want to make sure that your users can easily tell what is the subtotal or total amount for a item that they just purchased. Well, this is where a spanning table can come in useful, where you have a whole bunch of information that's extended throughout the entire table, and you can have a certain amount of it that's extended either aligned right or aligned left. That's exactly what's happening right here. So we have a total width right here for these rows, and then all this stuff is aligned to the right. And how would you use this? All you would have to do is you would have to contain a table row with a table cell, and you can align right exactly what you want. So in this case they're doing align right of the subtotal, the tax, as well as the total. And after that, finally, we have the virtualized table. This table allows us to be able to render a whole bunch of rows fairly easily without affecting performance that much. Like I said earlier, that the data table would provide us the ability to render a whole bunch of rows, but if you wanted to make sure that you don't have to worry about performance whatsoever, you can use a virtualized table and you can render as many rows as you want, up to a certain extent obviously, but React Virtualized is the library that allows for this to happen. I would highly recommend that you check this out as well. It's pretty useful for rendering a whole bunch of data if you wanted. And finally, we have the API. Now this API contains all of the different types of tags that's associated to React Table in Material UI. It has table, table body, table cell, etc. We are going to be using some of this in today's tutorial, not all of them obviously, but if you do want to learn how to actually target a specific class name, let's say in table cell, we can go inside of it, we can see how it's being imported, what's the use of it, all the props associated to it, all the CSS, as well as a basic demo. Alrighty, so now we have a pretty good understanding of how to work with the documentation. Let's get our hands dirty and actually work with this component. Alrighty, so I've opened up the app that we've been building in the last couple of tutorials, and the very first thing that we have to do is we got to import all of the stuff that we need. So what we have to do is we have to import table, table body, table cell, table container, table head, table row, table cell classes, all from Material UI at Material UI/material. And after that, we also have to import styled from Material UI/styles. And after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable that's going to contain all of our data that we're going to display into our grid. And you can make this data whatever you want, your favorite recipes, the greatest Spice Girls of all time. I don't know, I've never heard of that band before, but in this case, I'm just going to choose my favorite players. I got their name, their rings, the number of rings, the greatest of all time rank in my opinion, as well as their image. Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and actually build our table. So I'm going to get rid of this hello right here. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to import table container, and this container is going to contain all of our table content. And after that, we need to actually create our table itself. So what I'll do is I'll create a table tag, like so. And so inside of this table itself is going to contain two different tags. The very first tag is going to be our table head, so our header basically, so table head, and outside of there after that is going to be our table body, like so. And inside of the table head will contain all of our header content, and inside of the table body will contain our body or our array of objects data object variable right here. So you might have remembered in the beginning that we created our own custom headers as well as our own custom rows, and the way that we did that was we used the styled tag that Material UI provides, and this is exactly what it's going to look like. So we're going to be using this variable as our tag, and it's associated to a styled table cell, and what we're doing is we're going to give it a head with a specific background color of black, a color of white, and we're going to customize our body to be font size 14. This is coming exactly out of the actual documentation example where we saw the customization earlier. Now you might also remember that we created a custom gradient row, and the way that we do that is we're going to be using the exact same method where we're going to be customizing a table row in this example, and all it's going to be doing is selecting the nth type of every single odd row. It's going to provide a gradient to it, and every single even row is going to have, I think it's the orange gradient, every odd one is the blue one, and making sure there's no border at all, hiding the last border. And the way that we use this, it's pretty simple. All you would have to do is scroll to the very bottom, and inside of the table head, all you'd have to do is you have to provide the styled table cell, and inside of here we can provide all our content. And for our body, we want to make sure that our row has a gradient to it. So firstly, what we have to do is we have to map through our data. So I'll do data.map row, call the function like so, and we'll do return. And inside of here, we'll return each of our individual data points. So firstly, we have to call style table row, and inside of there we can call our style table cell, and inside of the style table cell what I'll do is curly braces row.name, and after that we'll do our rings and our greatest all-time rank, and finally we're going to create a table cell for our image, so it'll be source.image alt row.name like so, and we'll provide a little bit of styling to it. So I'll do like width is equal to, let's say 50, and same thing for our height, and I'll give it 50 as well. So now if we look at the app, we see that we have all of our rows, but none of our headers. So to make our headers, it's going to be really simple. Going back into our app, inside of my style table cell right here, I'll give it player name, as the very first row in our table cell is our name. And after that, we will do our number of rings. So I'll do number of rings. And after that, let's do greatest of all time rank. So I'll do goat rank like so, and finally player image. And now if we look at our app, we see that we have our header, and that's associated to each of the players' rows properly. So we have player name, number of rings, goat rank, and their image. And that concludes this tutorial. If you did enjoy this and it helped you out, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.